I congratulate all the nominees, and I'm going to take my time not so much to talk about the nominees as a couple other issues that's related to the judiciary. Last week, the Supreme Court threw out the latest Obamacare suit. Justice Barrett joined Justice Breyer's opinion doing so. Now, I'm old enough to remember when my Democrat friends insisted that the main reason we were confirming Justice Barrett to the Supreme Court was so that that new justice could dismantle Obamacare in that very case. And of course, that turned out to be nonsense, and it was a nonsense at the time it was stated. But my colleagues still boycotted the markup and left in their place pictures of children who would supposedly lose their health care if Justice Barrett was confirmed. It was fear-mongering, and of course, we know now they ought to be convinced that it was false. Have any Democrats apologized to Justice Barrett for questioning her integrity? Of course not. In fact, one Democrat went so far as to say that maybe the attacks on her character bullied her into voting the right way. It's sad that Democrats see judges as mere politicians, beholden to special interests and vulnerable to personal attacks. But it's also refreshing to see independent judges like Amy Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh do the right thing under the law. I also want to talk a little bit about judicial philosophy. My Republican colleagues and I have asked Biden nominees many questions about judicial philosophy. Some of those may be asked of our nominees today. We don't often get an answer, hardly ever. In fact, they seem to be allergic to the very idea of judicial philosophy. They won't agree to being originalists or textualists. They won't oppose the living Constitution. Now, that's fair enough. They're Democrats. But they won't embrace that living constitutional philosophy either. It seems they just don't want to talk about philosophy at all. To me, this means one of two things. It could mean that they're interpretive liberals and they don't want to admit it. Namely, they believe in the liberal method of interpreting the Constitution like Justice Brennan or an interpretive statute like Judge Posner. But don't feel comfortable defending those views in public. Or more troubling, it could mean that they're being honest and they don't have any interpretive method at all. And it really is just politics all the way down. I've started to ask nominees about whether law is just politics. How do they view law generally? How does the law relate to politics? Where does morality fit in? Where does the law get its power? They aren't any more forthcoming on jurisprudent questions than they are in interpretation questions. Now, our colleague Senator Kennedy has observed, surely they've thought about this, meaning what I just spoke about. They've thought about. And he observes that all of these nominees are very smart people, and they are smart people. I have no doubt that President Biden and demand justice expect them to have thoughts about these issues. So, what's the point in hiding your judicial philosophy? And they are hiding. Chairman Durbin recently quoted a Trump nominee saying he or she didn't like labels, to argue that nominees over the last 4 years didn't answer questions about judicial philosophy either. And of course, that's just not correct. It's true some Trump nominees didn't embrace the originalist label, but not all Trump nominees were originalists. The fact is that the Trump nominees didn't run from their beliefs. Neil Gorsuch said, quote, "I'm happy to be called an originalist." Amy Barrett agreed, quote, "I'm an originalist." I count at least a dozen Trump circuit and district nominees who either identified as originalists or said that they subscribe to originalist or textualist methods when asked. Maybe that's why so many Democrats voted against them. Maybe Democrats today figure a diverse group of criminal defense judges will reach policy outcomes that they like, and that's good enough for them. But it's not good enough for me, or I suspect the American people. It shouldn't be good enough for any senator who views the role of a judge as someone who will impartially follow the law and not just be a partisan in robes. So we're going to keep asking about judicial philosophy to see if Biden nominees can defend their views of the judiciary and the rule of law. We'll see if any of our friends on the other side join us in that effort. As to today's nominees, we surely won't get this kind of equivocation from Judge Gelby. A replacement for the phenomenal Judge Raul Arias, whose nomination was unfortunately withdrawn by Biden. Judge Gelby has a long history as a judge in Puerto Rico, where he has also opined at great length on multiple languages on his constitutional views. He even wrote a book about constitutional history. I look forward to discussing those views with him. Judge Kelly and O'Hare have interesting records that I'll want to talk about. Mr. Schroeder and Ms. Greenfeld are old hands at their respective positions, and I can only hope that they will give them the expertise and knowledge they need to assist me in my oversight requests at the Justice Department, which, by the way, for all members of this committee, I still haven't got my documents from Garland that we wrote about 6 or 8 weeks ago. Thank you all.